G'day guys, we've got a question today where it's asking us to factorise two monic quadratic equations which are in the sort of trinomial form ax squared plus bx plus c. Now what non-monic means is if we have a quadratic in trinomial form, i.e. ax squared plus bx plus c, non-monic means that the a just doesn't equal 1. So that's what non-monic means. So what I'm going to use this video for, is I'm going to use this video to go through the steps which I go through, which I find the simplest to solve these non-monic quadratic equations. Okay, well, let's start with the first one. The first step that I do is I check that with all the coefficients there's no common factors. Now in this case 9, 5 and 4, or 9, -5 and -4 don't have any common factors. So the first step that I do after that, or the second step, is I multiply my 9 by -4. So I multiply the first coefficient by the last coefficient and I get -36. Okay, now in a regular monic quadratic equation, what we do is we look for something that adds together to give the middle term and multiplies together to give the end term. And we're going to do exactly the same here, except instead of this term, we're going to use this term that I've just come up with by multiplying the first and the last coefficient together. So we've got something that multiplies together to give -36 and adds together to give -5 is going to be -9 and +4. So what we do with that is we use it to split the middle number into two, into -9x plus 4x. Now those two numbers sum together to give -5. And then we keep the front and the rear coefficients, the a and the c term, and we completely then forget about this -36. We're not looking at it anymore. Now these non-monic factorizations involve two separate factorizations. The first one is we're going to break this equation into two parts, the front and the rear, and we're going to factorize this part and we're going to factorize this part individually. So with the first part, you can hopefully see that the common factor will be 9x. And we multiply that by x to get 9x squared and -1 to get -9x. And with the rear part, the common factor is going to be +4. And we're multiplying the front by x to get 4x and the rear by -1. So that's our first factorization. Now, on to our second. Hopefully, it's quite apparent that the front and the rear have a common factor of x minus 1, this number here and this number here. So what we do is we use that fact that they have a common factor to then factorize again, let me just change the color, with x minus 1 being our common factor, and it's multiplied by 9x to get our front number, and it's multiplied by +4 to get our rear number. So this is our second factorization here. And what you'll see is this is fully factorized now. So if we were multiplying this out using our first inside, outside, last, or FOIL method, this would then multiply out to give this. Okay, so this will be our final answer here. So let's just write that down, second and final. Okay, so let's go about factorizing the second one. Now, with the second one, like we said in this first one, the first step is to see if there are any common factors with the three coefficients, and there are in this case, 2. So we're going to factorize the entire thing by 2. 10x squared minus 13x plus 3. And then, from there, we're going to do exactly the same or use exactly the same method as we did in the first one. We're going to multiply the front number by the last number, and that's going to give us 30 plus 30. And we've got two numbers that multiply and then add. So two numbers that multiply together to give plus 30 and add together to give negative 13. So hopefully you guys are aware that that's going to be, so let's split it, negative 10x minus 3x. Now let's put our numbers in. So then we have a 2 out the front, we have 10x squared, and we have plus 3 on the end. Then we forget about this part. What we then do is we're factorizing the front two numbers, and we're factorizing the rear numbers. So the front numbers, we've got this 2 still sitting out the front. The front numbers will factorize by 10x. And then we just have x take 1 in the bracket. And the rear numbers will be factorized by minus 3. Then we have in the brackets x to get minus 3x and take 1 to get plus 3. Now hopefully you guys are aware, so that was our first factorization again, so if we want to try and link it to the top one. Now we're going to take it all the way to here for our second factorization. What we do is we realize that we have a common factor of x take 1. And we're going to have 2 with a bracket. We're going to put an x take 1 out the front. And the x take 1 is multiplied by 10x. And it's multiplied by minus 3. So that's our second one. Now because this one though had a common factor of the 3 coefficients, we've got this number 2 hanging out the front. So to clean this function up, what we're going to do is we're going to multiply the 2 into our whatever bracket we feel like. I'm just going to do the front one. So we're going to have 2x minus 2. And that now is our final answer. So let's go through how this worked again. So number 1 is we're checking for common factors. Number 2 is you multiply A by C, so that's how I got this negative 36 and positive 30. You then split B by, like with a monic, by finding something that multiplies together to give the number that we found by multiplying A by C, and adding together to give our B, and that's what our B will split into. 4, we then factorize, so factor front and back. And then if there's a common factor with the front and the back, and then you, let's just do it finally down here, we then finish with our second, so this would be 5th step, second factorization. That's if you want to literally write yourself a checklist. Sorry about my handwriting. That's if you want to write yourself a checklist for your own questions that you want to solve. This is like the steps. So we check for our common factors. If there is one, we take it outside like we did in this second question. We then multiply A by C to get this number. We use that number to then split B. We then forget about the number we found by doing 2. We factor the front and the back, and then we do our second factorization using the brackets, hopefully as a common factor. And then we would be done. So it's not a very complicated process if you practice it and you know what you're doing. Now, this is one of those things in maths that requires quite a bit of practice to get fast and accurate at it. And so you don't get any mental blocks. So also, if you haven't learned your times tables, this is where it's going to also come back to haunt you. So let's, if you were going to do, like try and work up on these, just volume of questions. Volume of different questions is the aim of the game. So I hope this video helped, guys. If it did, swing me a like, subscribe to my channel. You can ask me questions on hopefully whatever topic you want, and I'll try my best to answer them. But until next time, guys, have a good one.